Welcome to Buffeting, the podcast where my wife Kass
Ew.
and I share our conversations on investing with you as we try to keep compounding capital so I don't have to go back to being a carpenter.
And I don't have to go back working with real estate agents. We hope you find it informative and entertaining.
But we are not your financial advisors and nothing we say should be taken as investment advice. As always, do your own research, which is more fun.
And now, without further ado, on to the episode.
You know, one thing men understand is dollars, okay? They're going to get
The one thing men understand and women don't is numbers,
It's
right?
numbers.
Would you recommend to other people out there to bring wifey on board?
You're not a psychopath or a sociopath. you could get there if you wanted to. I invest with all my women. On Sunday we raise a barn and on Monday we invest.
So I just thought maybe we could chat about how we started investing together and how we do it on a day-to-day basis and like what we find is helpful, kind of what are the pros and cons of it.
Yeah. And also because we both do have different, we've been married since we were 19. We've, been working on stuff together, whether it was houses or, jobs, projects. We've been working together a lot, but we do have different styles of working, don't we?
For sure.
For sure.
We have very different styles.
That's probably something that everyone can relate to. You have elements of your personality and your work style that work great for certain things.
Yeah.
And then you have other elements that are not ideal in certain situations. So us learning to invest as a couple has, I guess, in the model of, Bridgewater and honesty and openness and transparency. And investing is one of these things where if I'm being too open to your ideas and you're potentially too open to my ideas, it doesn't serve our goal. So if I just because I'm really passionate about an idea, and if you were to then say, like, maybe with the best intentions, I don't want to criticize this idea too much because I might hurt Mitch's feelings. Well, that's not going to help our investing at all. So we kind of have that openness as a basis for the way we operate, don't we?
Yeah, always try and remain like completely objective. And if you're aware of your weaknesses at the same time, you can make better decisions, I think.
Yeah.
It's all about learning, getting to know yourself and how you work. So yeah, getting back to like when I quit my job and started doing investing with you, we've had to kind of figure out a way of how we work because you work very differently from me. You're very good at just kind of
getting distracted easily.
No, well, even just sitting in a room by yourself and thinking, and you've got patience and you can you don't get distracted by stupid little jobs that need doing. Whereas I focus down and I drill down on these tiny little jobs and I lose focus of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Because I'm just well, you know how I am. I'll just like a little worker bee.
Well,
activity is success and progress for me.
Yeah.
But in investing, peak activity doesn't always
correlate
result
to
in the best returns.
Exactly.
Sometimes you should just be thinking and not acting. And for me, that feels like we're not making progress and we're not ticking things off a list. And that's my biggest weakness, I think. I focus too much on the little details. I lose sight of the bigger picture. But you're good at the big picture. And sometimes, you can't kind of...
It's a balance. That's the whole point. It's a balance because sometimes you do have minutiae you need to work through. You need to look at, of course, you should look at as many stocks a day as you can, as long as, we're actually open to researching them and the potential they could work out. But yeah, it's that balance between activity and result. And sometimes, so many investors, and I think the reason why I'm better at it now is because I was worse at it in the past. That's the truth.
How were you worse at it in the past? What do you think you've improved on?
Well, I used to feel like if I could get through 10 stocks a day, then I would end up having better returns, basically. I felt like that churning through ideas and that feeling of activity, I really felt like that did make me feel like I was getting somewhere, even if the returns weren't there. And but because there, but in any case, because I then was able to see like that way of working for me, I was able to see a period of me working that way, focusing and really like, even when I didn't feel like it. So even if I felt like reading a book about investing, I would say, no, I'm going to go through Value Investors Club for the next 2 hours and just like dig into shit. And that just didn't result in me being happy. It didn't result in more energy. I ended up feeling, each day I'm exhausted. Whereas the way I work now is I'm kind of like looking for things to jump out at me and to like pull my attention. And then I allow ideas to sort of like simmer for a few days.
Wow. So you've worked on like control and patience and perspective, sounds like. That makes me feel a lot better to hear you say that.
Oh, good.
Because maybe it's not like my employee mentality and my personal weaknesses in how I'm too focused and not able to like zoom out. Maybe that's not my personal weakness. Maybe that's just how investors start out. And it's the pitfalls everyone kind of can fall into.
Yeah.
Because you don't really know what you're doing yet. And you do think like, if I can make a task list for myself and go through it one by one and make an investment every, one investment a month, or, these arbitrary targets.
Yeah. That you pick at the start. So you might pick before you've even spent the month researching, I would like to have one investment per month or whatever. But my feeling on it after 8 years, could be right, could be wrong, I don't know. But my feeling on it is that you don't want to do anything. You don't want to move any money around or anything unless you're like, the idea is so good you can't stop thinking about it. And the market opportunity is so big and it's so far in your circle of competence that you know that you could go away for 5 years and it wouldn't even bother you. And that's the hard thing. And
so like, what makes you pull the trigger on taking an action on something? It's probably different for every case, but
I'm really waiting for like a sense of deep comfort with the idea. That's how I feel about it now. Like, I really want to feel comfortable that, a big chunk of our net worth, is invested with people who are smart and logical. So it's
a feeling for you.
Well, kind of. It's a feeling once all the facts are lined up. So like all the facts, gathering the facts, building the arguments, looking at the arguments, analyzing the arguments of people who disagree, like long thesis and short thesis and stuff. That's all part of it. But at the end of the day, when that's all done, I have to feel comfortable that I know the idea well enough. So I'm not sure if that's a feeling or if it's a decision based on my own feelings. So like, because I know that at the end of the day, when I'm watching the share price go down 30 or 40%, it's going to be my feelings that are going to trip me up. So, I'm aware of it.
But in the same respect, like, do you struggle with, because this is what I have now, like if we look at something and it kind of, the basis argument stacks up.
Yeah.
And the financial stack up, and we've kind of thought about the risks and it's not a immediate no because of the risks. Well, that stays in my head and I'm looking at its stock price every day. And if we haven't pulled the trigger on purchasing it, I'm like getting a little bit impatient and like a fear of missing out.
Yep.
And maybe that's because I've got no experience that I'm drawing from and you do. But do you find that impatience still a problem for you?
No, not really. Because I've so many times I've got that exact feeling you've articulated, which is like, I've done the research. I think it's like 30 or 40% undervalued. Like, I think it's probably going to produce a good return. And then the share price starts going up. Right?
Yeah.
And then you start feeling like, oh, if I don't get in now, I'm going to miss out. But I think going through the exercise so many times of buying that stock and then 6 months later being down 20-30%.
Yeah. It's like what was I rushing for?
What was I rushing for? Like, I have the feeling about it that there is always time. Like, you could have bought Google at any point. You could have bought Facebook at any point. You could have bought, Air Wellness at any point, over the past few years, and you've done well. So it's less about the week to week. I feel like you've always got another month. to think about it.
You always got time. Yeah. Well, when I have that feeling, which is like every morning I wake up, I'm like, why haven't we bought this yet?
Really?
Yeah, it's just like maybe it's my mentality playing into it too. Like I'm very impatient, and I can get very bullish.
We both are naturally very impatient, and because we really want this to work out. Like we really want to keep compounding money at over 20% if we can. So I think it's the
we just
the
want to
motivation.
do the best we can do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so anyway, yeah, so it's your experience that's like worked on your patience there that I'll probably have to work on that over time.
I mean, we've only had this happen, I think, once now with Loungers, which is the stock we were looking at a couple of days ago. We understand the company, we understand the industry, it's in the circle of competence, the valuation makes sense, it looks like it's understandable business, and yet still after all those boxes being ticked, I'm leaning towards no.
Yeah. And so am I, funnily enough.
And so are you now, but probably yesterday, maybe you were a bit more like you would have made the call?
Well, the funny thing is, if I could own Loungers right now as a position with our free cash, I'd prefer it to be in Loungers than in our cash. Sure. But at the same point, if we find something else in the next month or 6 months or year where we think opportunities surely have to start coming in, if the future plays out how we think it might, probable to expect anyway, I'd prefer to have that cash there for the opportunities. Yeah. So how do you balance the two? Like, do we just have it sitting in a position as like a temporary placeholder?
Yeah.
And you're just ready to sell that and transfer it into something better when it comes along? Because that probably doesn't make sense, because our case for Loungers is also a long-term case.
Exactly.
So why would we be holding it now at a valuation reasonable?
Yep.
But we don't think there's going to be much movement in it for a few years?
I think because every investment we make, I'm trying to make sure that when the money goes into it, I plan to keep it there for five years plus, basically. Yeah. So the fact that the market's so overvalued, well, when you compare it to interest rates, it's not overvalued, but when you look at it historically, based on earnings versus price, it's expensive.
Yeah.
No one could disagree with that. Now, the question is, does it make sense with interest rates? Is a different discussion. But the fact that we know the market is historically high is weighing on our decision with some of these smaller investments.
Big time.
Is that the right approach? I'm not sure, but we're about 75% invested now. So because we are 75% invested in some great businesses we're really happy with, valuations we're happy with, that last 25%, the way my mind is handling it at the moment, it's kind of like, well, that's got to be something really good. To be 100% invested at a time when the market is so expensive means that last investment has got to be so good. And despite Loungers being, perfectly justifiable as an investment, there's been quite a few that I would say have been very justifiable as investments. Maybe about one every 2 weeks, I feel like I find something that I understand well, and it looks like it's going to produce 15 to 25% returns going forward based on reasonable assumptions. But being 75% invested means that, happy to wait for now.
Yeah, you kind of want that kitty there.
Yeah.
For when something really attractive comes along and you just can't help yourself. You're like, yeah, that case makes sense to just let's get behind that straight away. You probably know that feeling a lot better than I do, but I can kind of get an inkling of it now and then.
That feeling, you don't want to know that you're on a you don't want to start thinking you're on a sure thing, but that feeling of looking at something, thinking about it every day, thinking about it every 2 days as an investment, being re-critical of it, which is what I try and do every couple of days. I try and think about all our stocks, and we talk about all our businesses constantly that we own, and looking for problems, looking for things where there could be danger, and that, I feel like that gives the conviction, that helps you sustain the conviction. And then to consider bringing a new company into the portfolio is always like, okay, do I really want to start a relationship with this company? Like a long-term relationship.
So would you say that's kind of like a ground rule for you then, or a principle? it's like when you're gonna buy a position to bring into the portfolio, that position is going to be something that you hold for a long time. Is that like a ground rule you have, or sometimes you'll change that rule?
Well, so there was a company a few months ago, maybe 9 months. No, I'm way off. Over a year ago, there was a company called Matula, which was like some kind of strange internet company, and it was just a merger arbitrage. So there was a company in Japan that was buying this Australian company, and they had said that for shareholders who own less than $10,000 of shares, you're going to get this much per share. And it was a technique designed to just like make all those shareholders agree to the buyout, basically. But what it meant is you could go in and buy the shares, buy $10,000 of shares, and you were basically guaranteed a certain amount of cash in the transaction if the transaction went through. And it was like a 25% upside as far as the big company in Japan acquiring the small company.
Yeah, so that's just more of an arbitrage.
Was like an arbitrage
position.
Thing.
Yeah.
And it worked out fine. So that apart from things like that.
Well, I wouldn't call that buying a position to bring into our portfolio.
It's just,
I'd put that in like our categories for options and kind of hedging in a little, little financial footwork or whatever. That's not really let's get behind this business and let's hold it as like a little baby of ours.
Exactly. So, yeah, considering that, looking at a business like that, business lounges, it just didn't quite meet our criteria, didn't meet my criteria. It wasn't there's anything wrong with the investment. That's the other thing, is that different people would feel more or less comfortable, and it would be right for them, but it wouldn't be right for me.
Yeah.
And that's the weird thing about investing, is that unlike, when you're a carpenter and there's one way of building the deck that is probably the best way of doing it, there's no like best way of building the deck for you.
Yeah.
It's very different. It's not like a regular job, because part of the investing is you need to be able to sustain the conviction for a long time when you start something, and that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
I think. But I don't know, as far as different ways of working, I do think like we have different styles. Like I try and stay relaxed no matter what.
You do. You're so good at that.
Like, I think that's just I'm just lazy. I just like being happy all the time.
You're
no matter
just
what.
chill. You're just so chill. I'm so jealous of that. I'm just like, I call
but
myself
you
kind
get
of
shit done sometimes, which
I
is good.
do, but I'm bipolar in the way that I think like I just amp up to like 100%, and I just want to
focus.
Yeah, I'm just like in a tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And then I can kind of get to those chill zones where you've just got total objectivity and perspective, which is a really cool feeling. I like to be in that zone all the time. I think that's the best place for an investor, to take your emotions out of it as well and just be so clear-headed and think of the whole picture. But I think it's interesting, the original topic of us as a couple.
Yeah.
Would you recommend to other people out there to bring wifey on board? How has it changed investing for you? Has it in a good way and in a bad way?
Oh, it's a million times better, for sure. And a lot of that is because you being the person that you are, where you're smart, you're interested in it, you're objective, you're super rational. Like, you're not a psychopath or a sociopath. But you you could get there you could get there if you wanted to, and that's a compliment, and it's a compliment.
You're not a psychopath, but you could get there if you wanted to.
If you wanted to.
Fuck me. No, I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you, sir.
No, yeah, well, I love you. No, I think because you're rational and because you understand that if you bring up a point or an idea and I shoot it down, I'm not shooting you down, I'm shooting the idea down, and vice versa for me as well.
Good.
Like the idea that you would think that the best way to invest is without ever exposing your ideas to criticism is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. So that's essentially, for us, the way it's working is that both our ideas, my ideas and your ideas, are now getting two kind of viewpoints for people who really care. Like, you care as much as I do about compounding the capital so we can do things in the world. So
it's been a good thing.
Oh, it's been a massively, massively good thing. It's been an adjustment because, you're used to thinking things through in your own head, but now, you ask me great questions all the time about different investments that we have, and I don't always have the answers, and I have to go and look them up and think about them and give you a good answer that I know you're going to ask me more questions on. It doesn't make sense. So that's how it's been for me. And if you don't want that as an investor, you're crazy. Like, you should definitely want that. It's been great. And not to mention the fact the ability for us, if we both agree on something, I guarantee come next downturn, we're going to be way better at maintaining conviction and ideas, because there's two of us who will come to a decision about it. Now, I don't think you want to add like 5 people to that decision framework, if you want to call it like a framework, because it get too confusing with
polygamous relationships. Don't bring your 4 wives on. Just your one wife.
Yeah, just pick pick your best one.
Now, say you've got 2 wives. No.
We're going to get loads of like hate mail from Mormons
my goodness.
In America saying, "Oh, I can't believe you discriminated against my my relationship. I invest with all my women. They all give me a great, we raise on Sunday we raise a barn, and on Monday we invest."
Are all Mormons like Canadian / Irish?
That was not the appropriate accent for that.
Oh, we're totally off topic now. So back to how great I am as an assistant investor. No, but my concern is, because I'm just learning and I'm asking questions, and I'm getting you to like really articulate your thinking on stuff.
Yeah.
I worry that could cloud your judgment that you've spent years honing down on. Like, how your brain works, and how you make decisions. And if I could change kind of my questions, stop you from doing something, or make you do something different to what you naturally would have, that's where I'm like, oh, I don't want to be responsible for that.
No, I've never felt that. Because I'm aware of it. Like, I'm aware that I could easily want to, give you your stock in the portfolio. Like, oh, we'll buy that one for you, love, and this one for me. And I think I've heard like Whitney Tilson. You know Whitney Tilson?
No.
Have you seen him? Well, he's like he's a friend of Bill Ackman's, and he had a fund, and he didn't actually outperform over however many years, so he closed the fund down. But he said that he had a period in his investing where he was by himself, did really well. He had a partner who he really liked, like another guy he was friends with, and they started joint running the portfolio together.
Yeah.
That he outperformed when they were doing that, and he said after that period of outperformance, he said the reason why he underperformed, with the 2 people investing together.
He underperformed with the 2 people.
Underperformed with the 2 people investing together was because he felt he was giving, like, oh, you can have that idea for you, and I'll have this idea for me, and he went to Harvard. He's a genius, but that is a stupid way of doing things. You need to have one person who makes the call, and that's what we're doing at the moment. So you're analyzing things, you have ideas, you do research yourself, but ultimately, like, it's on me to make the call. And that's, you have to have one person, I think, who pulls the trigger or not at the end.
Well, you have to respect the fact that one of you knows best or knows more in different areas.
Yeah.
So I guess you could say it works really well. You can have a massive upside with investing as a couple, but
Huge.
You need to already have an underlying agreement of total honesty.
Of course.
And when you bring up ideas, they need to be criticized objectively.
And this is an idea that applies to all areas of all relationships. But you need to understand that if I have an idea and you criticize it, you are not criticizing me.
No.
You are criticizing the idea.
The idea.
And that only works if you want to adopt the best ideas you can find in both your life and both in investing. And it works the same way. And because we have a commitment to that principle of always changing to be on the side of the best ideas, then that's why it works so well for us. But if you're, married, or you have a partner or whatever, and they're not interested at all in investing, then don't lose hope, because there was a point in our history where
let's go back there.
You were not interested at all, and I was like, reading about this stuff nonstop, but for whatever reason it just didn't pique your interest. So like,
if I could go back, I'd go back and I would slap myself in the face.
But I never pushed it.
But why? Okay, why don't you think you really tried to have the discussion? Like, did you? You probably didn't think I would ever be interested. Therefore, it's just a waste of time.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. The person you're talking to needs to be open to it. Needs to be open to learning and being and feeling like a dumbass. Because let's be honest, anytime you start learning anything, you're gonna feel like a dumbass, like for a lot of time.
Yeah.
You know, I still feel like a dumbass every day when I'm, researching things. Like you're constantly finding things that are just like way too confusing for you, and you don't understand.
I find that's the best spot to be, though.
Yes.
When you're just totally humble, and you got no ego going on.
Yep.
You're not like floating on a cloud because of just a piece of success you've just had.
Exactly.
And therefore you think everything you touch is going to be gold.
Exactly.
It's nice to be in the dumbass mind frame where it's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, but let's just be open to anything. But looking back at the point in time where I really wasn't involved at all or interested in anything you were talking about. I mean, God, I didn't understand what you were doing. I didn't appreciate how difficult it was, what you were trying to do, and like how much time and focus it required. So I think if I look back and I understand that, and I'm like, Jesus, like you had such great commitment and work ethic to learning about this. And
thanks, puppy. Although I don't think it was a choice. Like I was so miserable in my stupid job that I was just desperate to find any way out of it. So it was less about me trying to as a top-down way saying, okay, I'm going to work at this. I've enjoyed it the whole way. Like I've enjoyed the whole process. Like it's not as if I
love it. Yeah.
I love it. It's been fun the whole way.
You have to love it. But that, as I said, I think previously, everyone would love it if they actually really understood what it was. Mm-hmm. And I think any guys who chat with their partner, and if their partner does actually just stop and take the time to listen and like give this learning a go, then they're gonna love it too. Because it's it gives you control over your life.
And I really believe that the vast majority of people, like I'm talking above 99% of people who have a reasonable level of financial intelligence. So if you understand budgeting, if you understand ideas like sunk cost, and if you're interested in podcasts and that kind of thing, if you're that kind of person who likes learning, then 99% of those people I think can be decent to great investors.
That's true.
The difference between an investor who makes 8% a year and an investor who makes 30% a year, I feel like it's mostly just about emotional control. So actually forcing yourself to buy when things are down. Like you can run all the models you want and all the projections and stuff, but at the end of the day you have to move the money out of the safe account over to the investing account. You have to put in the order for how many shares you want to buy, and you have to hit buy, and then when it doesn't go through you got to change it, and you got to actually commit to doing it. So that skill is the hardest skill, and that will depend on what kind of personality you have in a lot of ways. But most people and most couples could be talking about the
doing
future, talking about where they're going to be in 10 years' time if they can compound at this rate, and the charities they can help and the things they can do. And I reckon most people would be better off doing it as a couple, for sure.
Yeah, like just have someone there like before you make these decisions, and just be like, are you on board with this? Does this make sense to you? And then you're sharing that load of responsibility.
Yeah.
Because these decisions are the future. It's your life and your future in your hands.
Yeah.
And if you can share that with someone, it does halve kind of the stress load, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. For sure it does. Instead of having the conversation like, oh, hey, Bubby, just letting you know, we're down 20 grand on this, you're going to know about it as it's happening. You're going to understand why, and it's going to be a lot easier.
It works. It works really well if you can get there. If you've got a partner who doesn't really know what you do with your time, if all they know is that, oh yeah, they're into it. My husband is into investing.
Yeah.
Which is all I really knew.
Yeah.
Your partner literally thinks doesn't know what you do with your time.
No.
Like, I was probably thinking, he's gone to his study again. He's going to read something for 5 hours while I bake a cake and clean the house. Like, you know, great deal. It's like, I'm getting fucking jibbed, aren't I? But
yeah,
I had no appreciation for, like, the gravity of what you were trying to achieve.
Yeah.
No appreciation at all.
Trying being the key word there, because like you never know you're going to succeed until you've done it.
No.
And we haven't like succeeded yet. We've just gotten to the point where it's going pretty well, and we've been able to, like, if we live cheap, we can do it full time. Like, it's not.
Yeah, we like to think of it as a checkpoint. Say it's like,
yeah,
we've hit like a safety checkpoint now where
the boss level.
Yeah, we can do this with our time,
mm-hmm.
and if we do well, we can keep doing it with our time.
Exactly.
But you got to start. You got to start the process in order to hit these milestones. And if you've got like a partner next to you, it's just, for me, it's really nice. I couldn't do it by myself. I don't know. I don't know if I could.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd have the conviction to stick it out.
Yeah. So, I guess in summary, we would say if you're in a relationship, if your money is tied together, then I guess think about it. Think about the person that you're with and the way their mind works. But for most people, I think explaining what you're trying to do is the best way to get buy-in, don't you think?
Yeah, like you're in a boat with someone else, right? You're in it together. If you're in a committed relationship with someone, you know.
Yeah.
You may as well have a co-captain if you can. Or you may as well just at least try and educate the other person a little bit so they appreciate what you're doing, because it's going to make your life a little bit easier.
And let's say you're spending 25 hours a week, you know, in terms of, you know, actual work, and you're probably spending another 20 hours a week thinking about it if you're anything like me. You know, the idea that you wouldn't want to have another 5 to 10 hours of like another brain, that you know how that brain works and you understand how they think, you know, working as well, like it's gonna do better for your returns. I would say it's been great for us.
It's been great.
It's been great.
That's all I wanted to hear.
Yeah. It's been nothing but good for us in our relationship, and I recommend it to anyone.
For sure, I would too. But you've got no negatives on it.
Well, you can tell from the pause that I'm actually taking the question seriously.
Oh, please do.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear it, because you're always so positive. And
I'm going to ask you next, so you got to think about it too.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I will. For my negatives, I don't have like a previous version where I was investing by myself, so I can't tell you if there's any negatives for me. Like, this is all new experiences and learning.
Yeah.
So it's all wonderful. And I've got like my guru next to me who's like, I'm like, babe, what does this mean? And you just give me the answer, and it's great. It's like a time saver for me. So although I've only been learning for a year and like actively analyzing for 6 months, I have had you as like a bit of a teacher, and it's fast tracked my learning, let's just say.
Yeah, I think it's been, I'm sure I have fast tracked it a bit, because like I've just wasted so much time reading bad books, and I've been able to give you the good books instead of all the bad books. Like, you know,
that in itself is just pure gold.
It's just, you know, that's probably helped a lot. But no, there's been no negatives that I can think of. The only negative is just, I guess sometimes I have to think about things a lot deeper than I would, and trying to explain something is harder work. Like, you might understand something, but until you actually have to explain it to somebody who you know will ask you good questions, you don't really understand anything. So it has taken more work for sure for the last 6 months, because not only have I been trying to find investments and stuff, but I've also been like thinking about the way to explain things to you and stuff. But now we've really hit a smooth point where you understand all of the basics, the basic financials. So, you know, your return on equities and balance sheets, and good businesses versus bad businesses, and commodity style businesses versus, you know, branded businesses, and like all those concepts you understand. So
on a surface level, they're kind of fitting with my psyche now. It's not like a different language. Yeah, I know the basics.
But yeah, okay. Well, that's all I can think of. I'll keep trying to think of negatives.
And if there is any negatives, let's figure them out.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to crimp your style. But a negative might be you feel more need to like justify how you're spending your time.
Sure.
Which shouldn't be a negative, because I just want you to like just do your thing, you know, because it's been working. So yeah, never feel like you need to say, yeah, look, I just spent 3 hours doing this, if you're wondering what I've been doing. But I don't think you have that anyway.
No, I haven't. I know that like I'm allowed to say, Bubby, I just want to read about this one company all day today, even if we had a plan. Like we're quite flexible. Mm-hmm. So even though you might say you're quite structured, you know, we're actually pretty flexible as to what we're researching. And if both of us agree to change the plan, we can change the plan. So even though you have like a more structured mind, and you've definitely like structured the tracking of our portfolio better, and you know, even the checklists that we use sometimes to go through things, like you've structured all those things much better. And those are ideas that I already had, but you've improved them. So that's been good.
Yeah, I guess that's probably the positives of a female brain.
Mm-hmm.
I think females are generally more organised, aren't they?
For sure.
So that could be a positive for everybody.
Definitely. And don't quote me on this, but I read somewhere, I can't remember exactly where it was, but I think like 95% of the world's capital is allocated by men. So just like pause and think about that for a second. Like men and women, I'm probably treading into some murky waters here.
Easy.
If there's any, you know, investing social justice warriors.
That's right. All men are listening. You can say whatever you want.
I'm about to get, you know, cancelled by everyone. But men and women think differently about things. That's been proven in many studies. They analyse
problems. I think you're safe there. Go.
Holy shit. The pitchforks are coming. No, they think differently about things. And that's an opportunity. A huge opportunity. Because if you've got 95% of the world's capital being allocated with a certain perspective, can you think about the hundreds of businesses that are catering predominantly to a female demographic who are being looked at by men?
Yeah, I know, but it's funny because you're only going to have an edge as a female. Your thesis works out when the majority of people realise that opportunity as well, and it's reflected in the stock price.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's great. I'm a female. Great. I can think differently from a male's brain, maybe, in some aspects.
Yeah.
But what impact is that going to have unless I've got other females making, like, a momentum and a movement in the same way that I'm investing?
Well, that's just that's a point that's been, you know, discussed for years, which is that what's the point of being right if no one agrees with you?
Exactly.
Like the market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. That's what Keynes said. So like you said, if all these great female focused stocks and we fill the whole portfolio, but the capital continues to be allocated by men and they continue undervalued opportunities.
We've got to wait till there's like 50% women, 50% men investing for that edge to take effect.
Yeah. No, I think that the advantage would be to try and find something where it's going through a period of progressively working out, you know, that the financials are changing. So over time, you know, one thing men understand is dollars. Okay, so the men are going to understand once the profit comes through, they're going to get
the one thing men understand and women don't is numbers. It's right?
Numbers. Put that in the promo of the podcast. That'll get a few. Just end with a bunch of.
Bubby,
imagine if we had a bunch of misogynists following us. That'd be great. God.
No, but it's a very interesting point. Didn't Buffett have a quote about that as well, where it's like he only does so well because that 50% of the market is inactive or something? Well, in terms of Matt, what did he say about that?
He said a fair bit of stuff about how a lot of people. What's the exact quote?
Yeah, I know. I have to look it up.
There's an exact quote.
It's not like our podcast is, you know, Buffett based or anything. It's not like we should know everything he said.
No.
Might have to change the name of it.
from yeah. I'm actually buffering at the moment.
You're buffering on buffeting.
I'm buffering on buffeting.
Very good.
Well, Buffett has said that he benefited massively because all of the women were concentrated in like 3 jobs, and one of them was teaching. You know,
wow, really?
So he had like the smartest women in the world weren't at NASA, and they weren't, you know, at the UN doing peace treaties. They were, you know, in middle school in Omaha teaching little Warren Buffett about maths and stuff. So
yeah.
But no, I think it's as decent idea as any that possibly there could be opportunities to get missed because the male brain sees something, doesn't understand how the product is interacted with the consumer, doesn't understand the mind of the consumer, and so there's potentially an opportunity. But
I don't know.
that's the second level of it. At the end of the day, you know, it's just good to have somebody else with you doing something that's hard.
But that's probably why for products that you don't use, female-oriented products, you're always asking my opinion or other females' opinion.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Might be an edge, might not.
Might be an edge, might not. But so far, so good.
So far, so good.
If you got this far, thank you so much for listening. We really hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Now, if you'd like to become my 22nd
or my 43rd
follower on Twitter, links are in the show notes.